Hello and welcome back to Somali Dispatch's YouTube channel. For Somali-related news and information, please visit somaliddispatch.com. My name is Abdulqadir Guled. Somaliland is in the midst of a contentious presidential election dispute slated for November of this year. Due to President Muse Bihi Abdi's desire to first register a new slate of political parties, the opposition parties reject the notion and called for demonstrations. To discuss the issues and perhaps possible ways out of the dispute, we have invited Muse Abdi, a developmental economist and a political commentator. Also with us is Hanad Darwish, a director of an Inspire Group, an independent social enterprise and think tank. Welcome, gentlemen, both of you, Hanad and Musa. Thank you for accepting today's discussions on the current situation in Somaliland. I will start by asking you both on your thoughts on Somaliland's current overall political situation. I'll go to Hanad first. Go ahead, Hanad.
Thank you very much. I think, to be honest, we're at a bit of an impasse at the moment, sort of in the wider sort of Somaliland journey, in my opinion. The direction in which things go has serious ramifications for the future of Somaliland, both domestically and internationally. On the other end, this is not something new. This is not something we haven't seen before. We've sort of got a new thing into the mix, which is this clash of the elections, presidential elections, and the election for the political associations. That is something new. But having a crisis at a time of election is not something that's new to Somaliland. Having a constitutional crisis, whether it should be the case or whether this should happen, and whether it's avoidable or preventable, is a different discussion, in my opinion. But I think we have a situation where you've got these two things that have come head to head, and coming out of last year's parliamentary and local elections, which were hailed as probably some of the most successful elections in East Africa in a very long time, and had sort of increased Somaliland's status globally. Now you come to this, where we are today, and the problem, I think, the fundamental problem that you have is the argument on both sides could be explored in many ways, but I think you've got a presidential election that's supposed to happen in just over 2 months. That is definitely not going to happen. We've got the president, Muse Bihi, who's authorized the political associations to be formed, rightly so, within the 10-year period. That's sort of with the way he's running it is a different story, but I think that's also we've hit the time for that. But the problem that I see at the moment, you have both of these two things coming head to head, and we have a president who, as opposed to trying to find solutions, just in Borma 2 days ago, we saw him throwing the solutions at a bunch of students, saying not the people in power. And the issue, in my opinion, is you've got a president who's fanning the flames and then throwing more fuel on the fire, as opposed to trying to find solutions.
I appreciate that, Hanad, and thanks for that summation of the overall situation. Muse Abdi, your take on the current political situation in Somaliland, and perhaps anything that might have Hanad left out or you might like to add.
Okay, thank you, Abdulqadir and Hanad. Thank you for having me. I all agree whatever Hanad told. And in every election year, the dispute become a normal in Somaliland. But our prior president or the previous president were, I think, so consultative, and they allow compromises in such situations. But I think the President Bihi is not like what our previous presidents did. He told that a lot of compromise is sometimes stupid. I mean, so this dispute or this electoral dispute arose when the largest opposition party, Wadani, held its Congress in November last year. And then after that, he changed his mind, and he thinks if he allow to hold elections on time, he will lose, and it could result in its biggest defeat ever. So and he frequently mingled with the people, and he started confusion what and if in every time. And as you are aware of, a Somaliland constitution gives the president more authority, and according to the another a different branch of the government, and it may be and it may cause them to to become incapable of holding their president and accountable.
Right. Thank you, Musa, for that. Hanad, you've mentioned and referenced the detriment to Somaliland, both inside the country and outside. If we start with outside, what could this dispute mean for Somaliland in terms of seeking its independence and its quest for independence? And how could the international community, who've praised Somaliland for its democratic achievements, how could they see this?
I think we have an issue here at the moment in Somaliland. I think, to phrase it this way, the fundamental problem is, the people in power currently in Somaliland view domestic policy and foreign policy as two detached and distant things. Shutting the internet off when the demonstrations happened a month ago. Actually, I was flying out on that morning. So I remember it's a month today, actually, the 11th of August. Was signified that sort of way of thinking, that you can simply just turn the internet off and no one is the wiser of what you're doing. The problem that we have and the impact that it could have globally is, if we're being completely honest, all that Somaliland has been selling for 32 years now is we're a stable democracy. And we have a situation now where, of course, it's always been flawed. No democracy is perfect. Every democracy is flawed. The mother of democracies, if you want to call that Britain, incredibly flawed. But the problem you have is, if you are not abiding by the rules and guidelines and your regulations, your laws, the legislation, the constitution that you've set in place, it's a social contract between the people of Somaliland, and no one, from president to parliament to the average citizen on the street, it has massive ramifications. And the problem that we see in Somaliland today is due to that way of thinking of, we can do whatever the hell we want domestically, but when I'm in Washington, D.C. at the Heritage Institute, I will, give this wonderful speech that is well prepared, and the world doesn't know what's going on. I mean, it is quite simply, it's quite simply stupid if you think about it in many ways. But the problem that it causes is a lot of people who have been, pro the Somaliland cause, for the Somaliland cause internationally, policymakers in the West, I know quite a lot of people who work in institutions of significance that could have some sway. And conversations that you have more recently, things like this do come up, the illegal detention of people without due process. We just, I think it was 2 days ago, had another TV station shut down. We have protests that are being killed. Funnily enough, in the government's own report this morning, where the government outlined that there was no use of, live ammunition by protesters, contrary to what they initially told people, and that at most that the protesters used stones and to throw at the police officers. And then comes the question of proportionality and use of force. You sort of you're turning the spotlight on yourself. But I think what it does is not to sway too far, but we have this democracy, we have stability. That is what we're selling, and it fundamentally damages that. I think I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but during the last 4 years, 4.5 years, that Musa and his administration have been in power, more people have been jailed, more journalists have been jailed than all autocratic states combined in 2020. And then you ask yourself, where are we really heading? We currently have a number of opposition party officials that are locked up. We have tribal leaders who are up. We have journalists who are locked up. And where does that take you, and how does that dent your credentials? One can only see with time.
Right. Musa, perhaps if you can weigh in on the detriment locally that the dispute could have, if not found a solution. As we know, the opposition is calling for parallel government or coalition government, more demonstrations. We know what happened in August 11 exactly a month ago, as Hanad referenced, with the parliament coming out today with a report on what happened and transpired, and it is a scathing report. Where is Somaliland heading if we stay on current trajectory?
Okay, so and I think the situation will might have another phase. There is a lot of people who seems who see that if Bihi continue with these illegal actions, it will have a negative an impact on Somaliland, and if the opposition part permits, so it will preferably take the opposition part must take any counterparts to prevent the President Bihi for becoming a dictator. So this what people will tell you. They say opposition party must do everything, whatever, with the peaceful means or maybe a violent means sometimes. So and now I heard there is some rebel groups, from Togder. Someone told me today. So it is there because they want, if Bihi continue this after November, although he says in October 28th, if the opposition party leaders meet their requirements, they will lose everything and they will abolish like Odok. He say that today. So they say in opposition parties must do whatever, and the people and the supporters of the opposition party, they are ready whatever means. The August 11, the protesters have placards and whistles, but they say whatever the opposition party told us to take, whatever, if it is gun or if it is by any other means, we are ready. So situation might worsen if solution not find within these coming days.
Right. Hanad, given your extent of exposure to international community as it relates to Somaliland and your past involvement with them, why are they so quiet? In contracts, when you look at previous disputes, as you said, electoral disputes are common in Somaliland, but there's always been some sort of a consensus reached in the nick of time, and the international community always played a role. Why do you think they're so quiet this time around?
I wouldn't say they've been quiet. I think in many ways this is it's not something new. It's been brewing for well into the beginning of this year. Statements were made most recently by the EU, the UK, a number of institutions. Finland's special representative for the Horn of Africa recently put out a statement. But the problem is, and this is a double-edged sword for Muse Bihi himself, because, for a very long time, international donors were massive supporters of Somaliland's elections financially. Last year's elections, we had very minimal. And he sort of got rid of the excuse that, we can't pay for an election by, ensuring that Somaliland paid for, I think it was 80 million that Somaliland spent. I'm not sure what the number was. The election
75% of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I think on one end you have this thing with this situation where, of course, they are very much, interested. Even the delegation of former U.S. diplomats who were in Hargeisa just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was just under a month ago, met with the opposition parties, wanted to see both sides of the story, and they have not been quiet on it. But I think it's reaching a point where people sort of become tired of the same story in one way. And we have a situation with the current president where this is somebody you cannot mediate with, and that's been evident from the fact that naturally the international community usually dips into Somaliland. You have a delegation of EU ambassadors. They meet with Musa on one occasion and leave, but they never, apart from Balanga last year, who actually took a serious made a serious effort to ensure he was the sole mediator in the dispute with the previous elections. But Somaliland generally deals with these things internally, and whether that is done, in customary ways, quite often that has not transpired this time around because it's been tried. The religious leaders have tried, the business community has tried, tribal leaders have tried, and you have a president who's not willing to budge. Under the guise of, I'm respecting and honoring the rule of law. Where was the rule of law respected for the woman who's getting a chest kicked, by a police commander in the middle of Hargeisa? The law has to apply across the board. If the rule of law should be respected when it sort of fulfills your political goals, only then it's complete hypocrisy. So I think the international community has not been silent on this, and I'm pretty sure behind the scenes there are conversations that I had. As we know, the Brits have an office in Hargeisa, the Danish have an office in Hargeisa, and I'm pretty sure there are pressures beneath. And having conversations with people abroad, I've been in London for the last month, and there are concerns.
We appreciate that.
About things that are going on currently in Somaliland, and I think so. It's
yeah, appreciate that, Hanad. Muse, for your take, why isn't the international community as forceful, perhaps? And there are talks that President Bihi is taking his cues from his neighboring country's president, the Djibouti president Ismail Omar Guelleh, who seems to have a similar electoral process in place, in which what Muse Bihi is trying to implement in Somaliland. Is there any credence to that? Is there any sentiment of that locally, as you are currently in Hargeisa, Somaliland?
Yeah, as you know, Somaliland survived it because Somaliland has two institutions. We know the state institutions and the traditional one. So Somaliland survived it because of its institutional, traditional, informal institutions. I mean, and a traditional sector, which participate whenever politicians disagree. However, Bihi and his friends refused all the negotiations because he's keeping something called, he say, I will keep the law. But he's speaking every day. He in the Electoral Committee, he added 3, which is his party's central committee, central council. So so that means he's breaking the law, and he always says whenever someone talk to him and say, President Bihi, you must compromise, you must save the country. He say no. Today we are mature and we are keeping the law. And as you said, I think he's trying to behave like a dictator, actually. And we know in the region, more dictators are there. And as you see, Djibouti or Eritrea, even Ethiopia, which is semi-dictatorship. So, and the region didn't welcome any democracy like Somaliland, and they may see if Somaliland continue with this progress, it might threaten them, and their people will struggle to get and the democracy that emerged in Somaliland, and but as you know, the political parties accepted everything that proposed by the negotiation committees, and the traditional ones, religious committees are there, businessmen, whatever, and whatever these committees proposed, opposition parties accepted whatever. Right. Even the last one was
right. I appreciate that. Just to finally conclude, because of time compression here, Hanad, there are 15 new political organizations currently past the first phase of registering their parties to be the 3 national parties. The elections are yet to come, hence the dispute. But what is your take on their ambition, as this clearly violates the timelines, as the constitution is, the presidential elections are constitutional, and it states that the president's term ends 1 month before his swearing in, which is in November, but the president is saying, no, we got to register new parties, and the current national parties have their certificates until December of this year. So the timelines of the elections is where the dispute really lies, and the interpretation, actually, the timelines are clear. What do you think is their ambition, the new registered political associations? What is it doing? What is it adding to the dispute? Is it a constructive thing to have such an ambition? What's your take on their outlook in this whole thing?
I think my take, quite simply, I think incredibly opportunistic, I must say, in many ways. I was very hopeful. I was one of those people that was very hopeful for the opening of political associations. Of course, thinking that we'd get something different to the current three parties that we have, something that's a bit more forward-thinking, dynamic, that has a policy basis and ideology. But the problem that you have is, it's sort of that door that it's called the rotating door. I forget the name,
Revolving.
but the revolving door, exactly. And every single, it's mainly men at the moment who have set up a political association are people who've been in the system of politics for the last 32 years in Somaliland. Nothing new, nothing ideas, and it's the same personality cult that we've had for a very long time. The issue that you have is an issue of willing blindness, where everybody across the board is blinding themselves, particularly with political associations, for their own gain. Everybody recognizes, even with the president's timeline, we were told by the government that the election of political associations was going to come before the presidential elections. With the current timeline, it doesn't come before February or March 2023. Of course, we don't see a presidential election happening in 2 months. Political associations, even by the government's timeline, were not going to happen until next year for political associations. Sorry. So I think you have an issue here where it's quite evident, in my opinion, of course, allegedly, I have to put that out there, that some are sort of being backed by the government or the ruling party. We've had that before, where the ruling party favors, one political association. What Dunny is a clear example, if I might put it out there. I think it's a matter of opportunity, but I don't think anybody's thinking about the future of this country or the greater good, but it's more personal gain.
Musa, finally, your take on the political associations and their ambitions and what it could do to the country.
I think what I also believe what Hanad say. There in our political parties, there is no policy or ideology that they have. Maybe some party maybe and socialist. He will help the society. We know Somaliland. People are mostly in a below poverty line. So and their jobs are less. Unemployment maybe more than 70% in the total youth unemployment. The quality of education is low, and we didn't see any political association, any new political association which says my ambition and my goal is to be this and this and my policy of politics and this. But we see a new political association is backed by the government in order to make it possible to party elections to become first according to their policies, I think. So, but we need these political parties have mostly they are packed by the tribal groups, and we need a change, I think, and our entire system needs to be re-examined and changed. The political system of Somaliland mostly produces one winner who take all the decisions of Somaliland. So, inshallah, I am and I wish that we will get a policy, a basic political organizations in their time, I think. Thank you. I
think that's an excellent point to end on our conversation today, gentlemen. I can't thank you enough, both Hanad and Musa, Hanad Darwish and Muse Abdi, who extensively write and discuss issues relating to Somaliland and its politics. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.